Sorry.
I am Todd Phillips, tax attorney. This is Smarter About Taxes. Today I have a guest, Dan Werry. Dan is a registered representative that specializes in helping you find 1031 properties that meet your needs. He also has other products that are tax advantage that we talk all the time about outside the scope of this, but worth a discussion with him anytime you're thinking about taxes, especially as it relates to investing, real estate, or otherwise. Dan's an expert in all those things. So today we're going to talk about, however, we're going to dive into the details a little bit or into the weeds when you have a 1031 exchange and when you want to get cash out of that 1031 exchange. There's timing issues involved in it, and the IRS pays close attention to these timing issues. So we're going to show you sort of where you're in a risky zone and where you're in a less risky zone. And then Dan's got some products that he can walk you through, probably not the whole product here, but just the general idea on how to invest for getting cash out of your 1031 exchange. I'm going to start my PowerPoint. Here we go. Everything's working perfectly today. Again, this is Smarter About Taxes. I'm Todd Phillips. I'm a tax attorney. This again, cash out 1031 exchange and some examples. I have to read the disclaimer. Just hit pause and read it. Do me a favor, but I'll go through just the highlights. I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. An attorney-client relationship can only exist if we contract for it. None of this information, therefore, can be used to relieve yourself of penalties, nor can you use it to promote or market or recommend these things to others. Thanks for paying attention to that. I think it's probably the reason why you don't see a lot of good attorneys on YouTube and on the socials because of this. So just please, thank you. Moving on. Okay, so what I'm starting with here is the general 1031 exchange timeline. If you're not familiar with this video is probably not for you because you got a little bit of homework to do to get familiar with this, and we're not going to dive into it here. But basically, I've identified the four main steps. Number one, you got an investment property, you want to sell it, list it for sale. That's step one. Step two, you actually sell it. This is where you have the qualified intermediary involved. They're taking possession of the money when you close on the closing statement. Don't mess these things up. The third step, you've got this period in between where you've got 45 and 180 days to identify and close on the new property. The fourth step is when you buy the new property and you've completed your exchange. I put this on here. You're going to understand in a second why it's important. These two moments in time, the moment in time on the closing statement when you sell and the moment in time in the closing statement when you buy, you absolutely cannot do a cash out at either of those moments. So if you're looking at this saying, I'm selling, I want to take some of the cash and put it in my pocket, these two timing mechanisms, really, really bad, you're going to get in trouble. I'm going to go through this really quick. Okay, quick example. I have another video on this where we go into a little more detail, but just to get you up to speed here, let's take this example property, $6 million sale price, $2 million in equity, $4 million in debt. These are Todd's rules of how to match up your 1031 exchange. Dan, you and I have this conversation frequently. This isn't the way the code writes it is super complicated, and it just doesn't make intuitive sense. So I made Todd's rules. Rule one, the simple rule is going to make sure you're safe. You're in the safe zone. That is, the property you buy, your replacement property, the price of that is equal to or higher than what you sold, what we call your relinquished property. And your equity is higher and your debt is higher. So notice those two things are ands, and all three of those things have a check mark. You do all three of those things, you're safe. Fact scenarios don't always work that way, so I have a backup rule. I'm in a little bit of trouble. I'm close here. Here's the backup rule. Number one, same as number one across from it, replacement property price equal or to or higher. That's an absolute has to be. And the equity is equal to or higher, meaning you can put more money into a deal and still meet the requirement, but you can't take money out. I've oversimplified this. Happy to have a conversation if this fact scenario fits you, but these are Todd's simple rules for you. Okay, so we apply this to, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Quick question. Yeah, on the simple rules, great illustration and certainly makes it a little easier to get to the brass tacks. On the debt, equal or higher, there's also the component of if you're $1 short, bring in $1 of additional equity. So the real estate value could be the same or higher, and that's how you accomplish both.
I think I might have messed up here, Dan, because that was the point I was trying to make with this, is exactly what you said. If your debt if your new property has a little bit less debt on it, you bring cash to the table, you're going to probably be fine. That's a great point. Okay, so let's just use this example though. This is the opposite. I want to go in and add more debt. So I've got my 2 million of equity, replace it with 2 million equity, easy to do. But in this scenario where I only have 1.5 million of equity in my new property, that's still $6 million. Okay, and I've got 4.5 million of debt. Here's where I've got the problem. This amount, this extra 500 grand is boot. And that's because you didn't use up all of your equity. Okay, I'm oversimplifying this again, but the point I'm making here is that these 2 points, the sell and buy point, the rules are set up to trigger you and cause you to have to pay some tax on that boot. Okay, so Dan and I are going to focus on doing the refinance at a different time. All right, thanks for your patience on that. I know sometimes we're trying to make this stuff easy and it's not super easy. Okay, so scenario 1, refinance before you list it for sale. This is somewhat risky because the IRS may take the position that you're doing this as one transaction. The IRS has support in the tax code, and they like to claim that you've done this thing for all as one transaction. They want to collapse it into one transaction. Say the refinance was really part of this sale. So the longer period of time you have between those two things, and the more decision points you have between those two things, the better. So if you're going to do this, make sure you haven't already listed it for sale. So we flip-flop these two around. You list it for sale, then you refinance. Now I think you probably are getting into an area where the IRS is going to take a position contrary to what you want them to do. So this is not the best time to do a refinance. I brought Dan in because he's an expert. We're going to talk about this timing. When I started practicing, this was at the end, when we refinanced at the end, this was less clear. It's become more clear over the years. So Dan, I'm going to turn the conversation over to you, but tell us what you're seeing clients do in terms of getting cash out of a deal after the deal has closed.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Todd. So Dan Werry is, I'm also from Irvine Advisors, and thank you for the time to share this information. And great illustrations, Todd, great information. And I believe if you're continuing to absorb the information with us, you're probably pretty interested in tax, but also these more nuanced or esoteric type transactions. Big picture, I can't give you tax or legal advice similar to Todd, and also any information we discussed today is really not investment advice. It's just to try to give you an understanding of different market concepts. If there's anything you'd like to narrow down, happy to help you in the future. I am creating also the new launch of a website just for education, 1031dstinvestors.com. Again, 1031dstinvestors.com.
We'll have all the links to that below in the video comment section.
Oh, thank you. And okay, so big picture refinancing, we have several clients that come to us, whether it's through their CPA, attorney, real estate brokers. They've acquired and taken advantage of the greatest tax advantage that we have today, which is real estate deductions to the IRS, some energy, but primarily real estate. And so they've taken that incentive, and in general, their retirement account is their investment real estate. Well, I have all this real estate, I sell it, but it's also time to maybe enjoy a little life, take some vacations, or maybe go buy or go acquire some toys. Big picture, what am I going to do if I need to do a 1031, maintain and keep that capital gain that I've accrued over the years? A solution to that could be similar to a cash out refinance. So instead of clients now selling a property, going and buying another asset, and then going through the process of 1031 themselves and or then qualifying and taking out a loan, we work with clients that are really trying to transition and go passive income. And in doing so, they are qualified for an investment because they're accredited investors. And now they'll complete, it's a two-stage process. They'll complete a transaction. So instead of the client qualifying for a loan to receive that equity back, it's already set up for them. So in roughly 31 days, So there's some magic into why it's 31 and not 30. They close their first transaction, 31 days later, they'll receive, just round numbers, 85% of their equity back. So we can get through the really, as Todd might say, get into the weeds, but big picture, 31 days later, they receive 85% of their equity back. Now it's technically outside of the 1031 system, and it's in an investment that they'll carry on for a certain duration. So I don't want to get too far into it, but Todd, maybe I can answer some questions. There are little nuances, but for the investors trying to access some of the equity in their real estate, this is the way to do it and defer the capital gain along the way.
I love it, Dan. This is good information. So you've got actual products though that are ready to go off the shelf. So if I'm an investor and I'm going to put this screen share just back up again real quick, this chart. If I'm an investor and I'm over here at this listing for sale or this sell point, and I'm thinking about that I want to get some cash out of this transaction, I can come to you and say, Dan, I need to figure out in the environment of 1031 how I can get some cash into my pockets. You have those solutions right on your shelf right now that you can say, these are ready to go. Let's get your property sold. Let's get you into exchange period. We'll get you in a new product, and 31 days later, you can get some cash out of the deal. Is that correct?
Yeah, so similar to a traditional 1031 DST, we have all of the due diligence. We've done all of the background work, and then it's a matter of spending the time with the client to make sure it accomplishes their goals. And yes, it's available. From time to time, there are windows when equity is limited, and then we'll tell you that's generally that it could be 30 days, 90 days, 120 days. So it's always better to plan ahead.
Great advice. All right, we're keeping these short and sweet, Dan. Thanks for your time. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more tax-related content for real estate investors, people who have small businesses or closely held businesses, or if you just love learning about taxes. Thanks.